to another edition of the Around the NFL broadcast. My name is Dan Hanzus. I'm in a studio, the Chris Wessling podcast studio, filled with heroes. Greg Rosenthal, Mark Sessler. Boys, the weekend's here. Free agency and a league new year is almost here. Mark, you're so excited that you're wearing the same shirt again 2 weeks later from our last show.
I have decided that I'm just going to lean into the agitation element of this and wear this shirt on this show every Friday until the end of time.
There's been so much going on, though, this week with, like, news breaking every day. We decided one of us has to stay in the studio to update the show throughout the weekend. Mark, you've been nominated.
No problem. Staying right here.
I do like the Homer Simpson vibe. You don't even have to think what you're going to wear. Always the same.
How an action figure works.
This mirth, it's out of this world, and you can get it 3 to 4 times a week on the Around the NFL podcast, wherever you get your podcast. This show on television or wherever you get it, that's what it does. We go around the NFL, and again, with the league year upon us, let's get into everything that's happening in a huge news week. Let's hit the big stories right now, friends, starting with Khalil Mack. This went down on Thursday. Mack traded to the Los Angeles Chargers in exchange for a 2022 second-round pick and a 2023 sixth-round pick. This is the same Khalil Mack, Mark, who was the subject of one of the biggest blockbuster trades of the last 5 years. Now he goes to the Chargers for a much lower price tag.
Yeah, and his best game with that Bears team was his first game back in 2018, where he was an absolute monster. They still lost to the Packers. An interesting legacy in Chicago. Last year was really injury-ridden. I like this for the Chargers. Number one, Brandon Staley and Khalil Mack know each other. Khalil Mack worked under Staley way long time ago. Basically said, I saw a head coach in him from the very beginning. The Chargers are in an AFC West that's like 4 teams. It's like 4 spaceships colliding into each other in space. It is a wild division, and if you're Brandon Staley, dangerous. You load up on defense and give him the tools. I love the idea of him paired next to Joey Bosa in that quarterback-heavy division. It's going to wreak some havoc.
Wait, if they all crashed into each other in space, none of them would get anywhere. Their lives would be over.
I think that could happen. I mean, everyone's like, they're not all going to win 14 games.
So they knock each other out and someone else takes over. Yeah. I wonder what Khalil Mack you're getting, because last year he was injured. The year before that, didn't have a ton of sacks. But if you look at the PFF grades, and I do trust them in terms of production, in pressures, and in terms of their run defense as well. Khalil Mack can still play. I love this move that you're only giving up a 2nd and a 6th round pick for it, and you're not really paying that much in terms of a price tag. It's a perfect time to get him on the cheap. I'm loving this Chargers team already. I think they're going to make a lot of noise this offseason.
My youngest son, Harry, went to school today in a Justin Herbert shirt, which is a Jets fan. I'm processing it, but I'm doing the right thing as a dad. I'm letting him choose his path. And if you are a Chargers fan, you woke up this morning, you're feeling good, because this is a division. I don't know about the whole spaceships colliding and everyone dying metaphor, whatever that was.
4 strong individual teams.
But there is a keeping up with the Joneses aspect now in the AFC West. And we're going to get to what the Broncos did, you need to make sure you build up this team on both sides of the ball. Good job, Chargers. Let's roll.
And I'd say the Chargers' main advantage, Justin Herbert's $7.2 million rookie salary for going into this season. The other quarterbacks in this division cost a ton of money.
And if you're going to run that defense, you're kind of admitting you'll give up some big running plays. You need to have 2 great edge rushers. They've had 1. Khalil Mack being your number 2 and not getting the attention. You know the protection sliding over to Bosa. That's pretty simple.
Just got to stay healthy, like you said. I mean, he's getting it up there now. But, yes, a very good trade. And on the Bears side, obviously, it's a rebuild. It's a tear down. And you want to acquire draft picks, free up cap space, and live for another day. That makes sense as well. But, yes, the Khalil Mack story ultimately disappointing in Chicago, because when they brought him in and everyone was killing the Raiders for giving up this superstar player, well, 4 years later, they never really threatened for the Super Bowl, and now he's gone. But
I mean, they had a Super Bowl defense with him being the best player for 2 straight years. It was the rest of the team.
Yep. All right. In other news, yes, Aaron Rodgers. We don't have to talk about Aaron Rodgers this offseason too much. I don't think so. You never know with Rodgers, let's be honest. But Packers, Rodgers agree on a 4-year, $200 million contract. It makes him the highest paid player in NFL history in terms of dollars per season. That is pretty great money, Greg, and well-earned, and hopefully now the Packers can move forward as an organization.
And I want to see what they do next. You had to start with this, and Davante Adams getting the franchise tag. I think Zadarius Smith will be out the door. I think a long-term extension is coming for Alexander. I think they'll find ways to be creative. I don't think this is as crippling as people believe. Look, he was getting a lot of money before. His cap number isn't changing that much. For this year, actually, it's going down off of what it was projected to be. My bigger question is he going to be like Tom Brady and continue to peak at age 39, 40, 41, 42, which is what this contract is taking you through? He's been doing it. 37, 38, he peaks with an MVP. Is he going to stay at that high level? That's what he's going to need to be for it to be worth it.
This tedious melodrama, and by the way, we are now about 48 hours past it where it is wonderful to live on an earth. We're not hearing about the Aaron Rodgers thing every 5 minutes. It's just a wonderful improvement.
There's some buzz that might come back if you look at the contract closely next year.
Greg, don't speak now. So please,
there is a little bit of that.
Stay away from that. But this was always the best move for Aaron Rodgers. Like, we just talked about the AFC West. Do you want to go into that division if he would join the Broncos in another parallel universe against Mahomes, Herbert, and the rest? The NFC North is mostly dead weight. They're going to win the division again, and they're built to do it. And this also was the domino of getting Davante Adams back versus him fleeing to the Raiders or somewhere else.
And they will get on to the tags later, but he's tagged now, so the best wide receiver in the league arguably is staying here. Now you opened up Pandora's box. What is there a trigger to get out of the contract next year?
It just looked like there was a way with restructuring and the way the contract is said that we could be at a point where he has a little bit of leverage next year too to
he also spent hours meditating about the idea and the concept of retiring. I don't like players thinking about retiring.
They had to leave an out for themselves in case he changes his mind again. You can't exactly rely on him to be of the same mind.
But this is the freedom we have for at least the rest of this year.
I hope so.
No retirement talk. No, maybe I want to play somewhere else talk.
He instructed you, Dan, to go read a book. Maybe, when we're not dealing with Aaron Rodgers, you can read a book.
Don't tell me to read a book. Let's move on. Yes, the AFC
Dan hates
West.
books.
It's like, I'm reading 2 books right now, but don't tell me to read a book.
An adult man does not tell another adult man, go read a book.
Or a woman, Mark.
Well,
it's International Women's Month.
I'm only referring to you in this situation, you and A-Rod.
Mark's been having some issues, though. He tried to bring it down to just International Women's Week.
Oh, no.
Trouble.
On the podcast, he tried to bring it down to National Women's Week.
Well, no, it wasn't intentional. I just simply need. I'm completely.
That's what they call a Freudian sleep.
I get what's happening now.
The Broncos, AFC West talk. They have a quarterback. It's Russell Wilson, one of the biggest trades in the last decade, more of the NFL.
Ever. I'm saying
you're doing the ever thing again.
It's just
the Herschel Walker trade. Because then you have to look at the big picture. We don't have the big picture yet.
That built the Cowboys dynasty. So
like
huge.
A mid-career running back who didn't even make the Hall of Fame, or a quarterback still playing at the top of his level. I mean, I think this is number one.
That's
number one.
All right.
Greg was playing with Castle Legos when the Herschel Walker trade happened.
All right.
There's a lack of perspective.
Russell Wilson, 2 first-round picks, mid-round picks, players all go back to Seattle. So the Broncos, Greg, get their guy behind center and instantly, to me, become a contender. So it's already a win for Denver. As for Seattle, it gets a little murky. Where do you want to start?
I'll start with the Broncos because of the weapons that are around Russell Wilson. Yes, you gave up Noah Fant, but other than that, it's incredible the receivers that he's going to throw to. It's the best group of players around him ever. And they had some great Seahawks offenses early in his run. Cortland Sutton. KJ Hamler, to me, has a lot of juice if he can stay healthy. Jerry Jeudy is the number 1. I've loved Albert O in his development over the last couple of years. That's why they could get rid of Noah Fant. And Javonte Williams, a true number 1 3-down receiver. You got to fix the protection a little bit. I have questions about the defense. Everyone's just thinking the defense is going to be fine. But Russell Wilson is going to get the chance to cook. They're going to throw the ball a lot.
What was the huge issue in Seattle from about 2017 on? It was Russell Wilson working under Pete Carroll, defensive-minded coach who wanted to run a more conservative offense than Russell Wilson wanted to. Now you've got Nathaniel Hackett, who has the stamp of approval from Aaron Rodgers, running an offense that should fit well for Russell Wilson. I mean, they're going to have to tinker with it a little bit based on what Hackett has been. But I'm with Greg. I think this was the best setup for a star quarterback to go from disgruntled Team A to landing spot B. It was Denver for Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. It was surprising to us that it wound up being Russell Wilson, but I love it.
And obviously, Russell Wilson had a no-trade clause. This is the place he wanted to go. And in the end, sometimes with and we had Michael Sean Dugar from The Athletic, who covers the Seahawks, on our show this week. Having this ability to pick your spot, sometimes he's a little on the nose with how he transmits communications to the media. We get that, but at the end, he played the game well, just like Aaron Rodgers did. And we'll hear more from Michael Sean later, by the way, on this episode. He got what he wants. He set up very well for his second arc of his career, and I think he's going to have a big year this year.
I do too, and yet, what's the over-under for where they finish in the AFC West? 2.5. Like, I don't think they're ahead of the Chargers. I don't think they're ahead of the Chiefs, certainly. I would put the Chiefs ahead of.
I don't know if I agree with any of that.
So
really.
he is leaving the best division in football, and he's going to the best division in football. Like, the NFC West had the 2 conference championship teams, 3 playoff teams, and it's going to be very difficult to get out of 3rd or 2nd or 1st place. Maybe they could do it. They certainly have a chance.
I'll say this.
They could be in 3rd as well.
And, meltdown in Arrowhead in January aside, I think it makes sense that the Chiefs are still the favorite in that division. But I don't look at that group of 3 teams, and I respect the Raiders, too, as a team that can make some noise potentially. I don't see a clear favorite. I think it's going to be an awesome division to see how it all plays out, because I think they all have like a 12-win ceiling in that area.
Yeah, I think if you're the Raiders, you're thinking, what else do we have to do to find a different landing spot? This division is going to be rough for them. But if we love the Chargers, the Broncos the Seahawks basically became what the Broncos were. A good team with no quarterback. They've willingly walked into an abyss, and that's a divorce that I think is going to have a lasting impact on the legacy of Pete Carroll and John Schneider.
Right. I feel like I wasn't positive enough for the Broncos on our podcast during the week, so I want to correct that. Like, this is a great job by George Payton. It's so hard to get a quarterback like this at this point of his career. It's worth the risk. I do have questions, though, about their offensive line. You lose Mike Munchak, your offensive line coach, maybe the most valuable assistant coach in the league, and you lose Vic Fangio. Your boy running that defense, and now you have a first-time coordinator in Ejiro Evero running the defense with pieces that maybe don't totally fit. So I think that's just something to think about as a Broncos, but it made total sense. They're out of purgatory. They had Drew Lock as their quarterback.
Well, that's why football's funny and frustrating sometimes, is that they made a lot of bad decisions at quarterback in Denver, but that ended up clearing the runway and set up this moment. Now they have a Hall of Fame level quarterback. One more quarterback to talk about, not a Hall of Fame level quarterback. Carson Wentz on the move again, traded by the Colts after one season to the Washington Commanders for multiple mid-round picks. And Mark, this feels like, obviously Washington got a lot of criticism for this move, and it's still hard to paint it positive, because why did you give up so much for a guy? Who are you competing against for Carson Wentz's services?
Total desperation. In a weird move that I think leaves a bad taste in the mouth of a fan base that's had a lot of bad tastes in the mouths already. I mean, this is annoying to me, because Taylor Heineke, to me, gives you most of what Carson Wentz would on much less money. This has already put them into a cap situation that is dangerous. I don't like it for him at all. Carson Wentz now has 2 teams in his past where you question, the play, but also the player in the locker room. There's just been whispers that he's not maybe the easiest guy to hang around with, and he's not maybe the leader that they want. And to me, that's not what Washington's pitched this offseason. We're going to go get that guy. This was not it. I still think they're a candidate to draft someone.
If you take out the leadership stuff, though, he's just not accurate, and he's not a great decision maker. And that's a killer. He's counting on his athleticism to win plays for him. I'm with you. To me, the guys like Andy Dalton and Jacoby Brissett are close or better than Carson Wentz, and you could add him for free. There was a report by our guy Zach Kiefer at The Athletic that their initial offer from Washington to the Colts was a 4th and a 6th round pick. That sounds about right. And it's like they held out, and the Colts did a nice job getting 2/3.
I think it does get forgotten now because the season ended so poorly. They did win 9 of 12 heading into Week 17, and Wentz wasn't the main driver, but he wasn't terrible. And how could Washington do this? They watched the full season, and they factored in the good and the bad. We're all focusing on all bad, but you're right about the locker room stuff, too. The fact that it's 2 straight teams that don't seem to see him as a leader, your quarterback has to be a leader. That's a factor, too.
He's going to a worse situation.
He is.
Where quarterbacks go to die.
And the Colts were focused on those 2 bad games and a lot else as well.
We are just getting going on the broadcast. How exciting. We got more news to get to in what is the busiest time of the offseason. this week, next week. If you love football and drama and news, it doesn't get any better. We'll hit the latest up next on the broadcast. To the broadcast. Like we said, it's News Christmas. So we're going to celebrate right now by diving deeper. Mark, get us going. What we got, baby?
Well, out of Cleveland, our friend Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer has reported.
I wish we had backing sound right now, like a newsroom, busy, like, and typewriters
Absolutely.
going.
We need those sound effects. Well,
Dan
the Browns
loves being
have had,
a producer.
Yes, he does. The Browns have had Derek Carr on the radar. If you're Baker Mayfield, you're fighting a war against everyone this offseason. You're not getting extended, and you got competition. What do you think, guys?
Play better, and this wouldn't happen.
That's fair. Is this an upgrade?
I buy it. I like it. I think he would fit what Kevin Stefanski does. It's kind of a paint-by-numbers offense. There's a right answer on every play. Go from progression 1 to 2. Like, do what I tell you. That's Derek Carr kind of as a quarterback. Maybe not the most creative guy in the world.
But submissive.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying intelligent. Coachable. And I think Baker, in a perfect world where Baker's a little better than he's been, I feel like he would have a little more freedom than he does.
I believe Carr would be an upgrade, but he would also cost a lot of money because you're going to have to give him a new contract. So you got to factor in multiple sides of that.
This Browns fan does not love it. All right, we've got another topic right here. Christian McCaffrey.
Pretty good.
On the trade. Well,
Good
there's
job.
a lot of hubbub about I have to tee up 2 things in a row. I think I did that professionally. Christian McCaffrey.
That was until you said that.
Right. Why did I explain that to the audience?
I don't know.
I don't know why I did, but he is, and also I know. So we're just burning time here. On the trade block, I don't know if I buy this because if they do trade McCaffrey, you are still saddled with $27 million in dead money, and you're telling Ben McAdoo, your prized new offensive coordinator, we're taking away your best new player, and you have no quarterback.
Prized by who?
Well, I'm just saying they said we're going to get a big name.
I get it though. The idea here, and I love Christian McCaffrey, the player. Hate what's happened the last 2 years with the injuries. But they're saying we don't have this set up right. We don't have the quarterback. The running back is a brilliant player, but he's not healthy and he's getting paid a ton of money. Let's try this again if we can get the right haul back.
They're trying to do what Russell Wilson did when it was like, hey, I don't want to be traded, but I'm just giving you a list of teams in case I did. The Panthers want to trade Christian McCaffrey. This would not be out there if they didn't want to trade him. Usually when this gets out there, it's going to happen.
Is he a Panther week 1?
I'm going to say no.
Mark?
I'll say no, too, because, I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire, some say.
Hey, the Cowboys are quietly in cap hell. How about that? This is interesting because it doesn't seem like teams should be, because the cap was raised to $207 million, I believe, now for teams, and you would think you could find ways to make it work. But what are they doing? They're getting ready to cut Amari Cooper, who is a really good wide receiver, if they can't trade him, because they can't find a way to make it work. They're looking to potentially trade Lyle Collins, who's been one of the better tackles in the NFC for several years now. They've restructured contracts with Dak Prescott, Zach Martin, two other big-time players. They're trying to get this set up for the new league year, and it just shows you that there are teams that have issues in this department.
Well, you got a problem. DeMarcus Lawrence is a $27 million cap hit. You mentioned Cooper. He's 22. Zeke Elliott is 18. This is a star-heavy, top-heavy team with zero glory in January.
They should have had their titles by now, because they've had this group together forever. Tyron Smith is another name with a big cap number. You can't get rid of DeMarcus Lawrence, though. He's the best player on your team. They asked him to take a pay cut. Sounds like he politely declined because they'd be doing him a favor.
And when they blow that game
They cut him
in Dallas with the silly slide by Dak and all that, that's how it works in the sport. You have your windows, and then they close.
See, one of the reasons why they're in such trouble is because I think Amari Cooper and DeMarcus Lawrence knows they're going to get a ton of money this offseason. Harold Landry and Mike Williams are kind of the canaries in the coal mine of what we're going to see over the next week. Nailed it!
I mean, when we celebrate it, though, that's the problem. Why are we now?
Because we're not professional.
That didn't help it.
Harold Landry got $52 million guaranteed. That's more than Aaron Donald. Like, that's the fourth most of any defensive player in the league. Mike Williams is now the fourth highest per year wide receiver in the league. You know who's number 3? Keenan Allen, who's his teammate. So I just think it's a sign of the salaries are going to go way up, because we've had a couple years where salaries were contracting because of the pandemic, and now they're going to explode over the next week. Going to be very hard for teams to keep their guys.
Well, it's like everything else in the pandemic. People have been shut in their homes for, month after month, and then suddenly you're allowed to go to restaurants and bars, and like you're opening the wallet and going wild, and now this is for football players.
Right, and then you're on the floor next to the toilet in the morning. It's like, just take it easy.
Right, please.
Listen, if we're hoping the world gets back to normal, we don't have to rush back into this thing. Let's just ease in. You know when you buy a little goldfish, and then you put it in your fish tank, but you keep it in the bag at first so it can acclimate to the water.
Transitory.
And then
Right.
That's what we have to do as a people.
Be stuck in a plastic bag filled with water.
It's like
Temporarily.
they're getting a lot of money. You know who's not getting a lot of money? Who's taking a big pay cut next week? It's Brian Greasy.
Transition.
The 49ers new quarterbacks coach. Like, what is going on here? Brian Greasy, who was the Monday Night Football announcer, decides to go to the 49ers as quarterback. I feel like this supports your theory here, Mark, about Tom Brady. Former teammate at Michigan.
Yeah, he's also
Breadcrumbs.
He is extremely close with Kyle Shanahan. I do think it's interesting, though. Your zero coaching experience, and let's say they don't go the Tom Brady route, and they move on from Jimmy G, which we all expect. You've got a quarterback coach with no experience dealing with Trey Lance. Now, there are other people on that staff, and you certainly trust the Niners in general as a coaching staff, but it's an interesting hire. I mean,
he's an old school. Like, when he spoke on the broadcast, he did not strike me as someone who was
On this show, the broadcast?
not our broadcast, the Monday Night Football, as someone that was like cutting edge in terms of running a Trey Lance offense. It's almost like are they going to try to make him into a traditional passer?
Yeah. You know, that Monday Night Football franchise is in need of a lift. Troy Aikman is coming to bring it. Speaking of franchises,
There he goes.
the franchise tags are locked and loaded. Here are the teams. You kidding me with that transition?
I want to try mine again because I'm annoyed with how this is going since I was.
Look at that neck on Gesicki.
It's absurd.
Nice neck on Gesicki in a big spot. Look at the tight ends. It's very affordable to have a tight end right now on the franchise tag, so that's why somehow David Njoku got tagged. No shot against the Browns, but
no,
yeah.
but they have a ton of money tied up in Austin Hooper. I mean, it's interesting that it was the conversation about how to tag tight ends and what they should be paid still hasn't changed.
Right.
Some of these
Safety
guys.
is similar, too. Njoku was the lowest ranked player on my top 101 free agents to get tagged. He's a tease.
Greg's just like,
I'm just saying, he's good for like 3 games a year, and you're like, wow, this guy's exciting.
he
but
looks the part.
It's not consistent. Cam Robinson getting franchise tag was fascinating because the Jaguars drafted Walker Little in the second round last year, a tackle, and now they keep their left tackle. That would seem to indicate they're not going to draft a tackle, and when that happened in the desert, Aiden Hutchinson, the Michigan pass rusher, the odds of him getting taken number 1 overall went way up.
Shoots up. And I will also note that there's a new trope alert in town. Whenever the franchise tags happen, there's always one guy that's like, no, you're labeling me this, but I should be labeled that.
Right.
Mike Gesicki in Miami says, look at the routes I run. I should be tagged as a wide receiver and be getting whatever it is, $8, $10 million more.
The Jimmy Graham complaint, basically.
Yes, the Jimmy Graham complaint. So you put a tag on the combo.
He was like top 5 in slot snaps. Makes sense.
All right. Yes, the league year. Happy New Year. It's coming up.
Hey, look at that. Zach Wilson completion.
Shut up. We are going to fill in the blank as we look ahead to a start of a new campaign, free agency, trades. It's going to be wild. Up next on the broadcast. Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the broadcast. The new league year rings in next Wednesday. The legal tampering period, Monday. Let's get into it. Fill in the blank style. Let's start right here. The blank will win the offseason. Now, win the offseason is always in quotes because usually when you win the offseason, you don't usually win the Super Bowl. But who will win the offseason? I believe it will be the New York Jets.
Oh, big surprise.
My New York Jets will win the offseason, and it's not because I think they're going to win the Super Bowl. I don't have faith in the organization right now, but I will say that they have a ton of money, they have a ton of needs, and a general manager that needs to show some progress in his third full season on the job. You put those things together, and it's time. Also a team that's not been in the playoffs in 10 years, longer than anyone else in football.
Where do you think they go?
It's time. I think they come out of this with a big cornerback, maybe J.C. Jackson. I think they come out of this with a big wide receiver, maybe an Allen Robinson. I think they get a tight end, a veteran tight end, and maybe another big splash.
Man, that's a lot.
What could go wrong?
That's a lot. I can imagine people going wild, though, if that happens. I can imagine people going wild for this team I'm talking about next. The entire sports media, including myself, we're ready to just jump back in and do the same thing that we do every year after this team signs Rob Gronkowski. It's the Chargers, the official team of sports Twitter, NFL Twitter.
I love this idea. I think Gronk is going to go to a team that's a contender, that's fun, that's probably in a major market, that can help feed his entertainment goals post-career. Yes, I like it.
I'm with you. I thought I was ahead of the curve with the Brandon Staley love a year ago, but now apparently everyone on Twitter is a Chargers fan.
Okay, here's the thing, too. Tom Telesco, Sneaky needs to get something going here. Their general manager has been there for about 10 years. Let's make it happen. He's got a quarterback on a rookie contract.
Do you honestly think people are excited about the Chargers because of Brandon Staley?
I'm just saying a year ago I was all over that beat.
Go ahead.
This one.
Like 6 years old.
The team prepared to fire a stun gun at the rest of society. They're going to be a big surprising move. Okay, it is the Niners. It is the Niners. They are going to pull off a trade for Tom Brady. I am predicting this. I'm telling you right now, I'm not buying this business.
This isn't going to happen.
I am not buying this business that Tom Brady is sitting around at his house and like Gisele's like, what did you do today? It's like, I reorganized like your 3,200 pairs of shoes by color coded. She's like, Tommy, do not touch my shoes. Don't do that. You're here too much. You're home too much. Well, I'm just saying.
Let's rein it in, Seth.
Tom Brady is bored and he wants to go back and play football. You're going to pair him with Kyle Shanahan, Brian Greasy. It's happening. Book it.
You said book the trade?
Book it.
Wow.
No one's going to remember this.
All right, Blank will sign.
All those picks for Lance. How many more picks do they have?
It's wild, but it's fun.
Keep going
Blank
down the
will
road.
sign a deal with the most guaranteed money next week. I will go with a left tackle. I'll go with Tron Armstead. This isn't a shocker. Greg, I think he's number one on your free agent top 101. But if you could sign a tackle, especially, and he could, by the way, he should send a little thank you note with $1 million attached to Andrew Whitworth, who just started as a left tackle at 40 years old for the Rams. So you could sign this guy long-term, give him a ton of dough, and feel good about it.
I think it's him or J.C. Jackson. Maybe Carlton Davis, but I think you might be on.
I just did the Brandon Frazier at the Golden Globes.
No one knows that reference.
Somebody does. Greg.
I'm going to talk about the team in the NFC. We haven't spoken about almost all offseason. I believe they're lying in the weeds, but if you look at the breadcrumbs lately, I think it's the Philadelphia Eagles. They were reported to have a trade in place for Calvin Ridley, and then that couldn't happen because of everything that happened. Calvin Ridley getting suspended for this season. They were supposedly on the outskirts of the Russell Wilson talks. And this is a team who has a quarterback on a rookie contract. I don't think they're going to be able to upgrade at quarterback. I think they are going to be wild and be another candidate for the offseason winner.
Well, and it's the draft picks, too. I mean, they're completely set up to change the team entirely, roster from top to bottom.
Our guy, Ian Rappaport, reported Friday Fletcher Cox might be on the move. So I just think you're going to see a lot of Eagles moves.
Finish it, Mark.
All right. Drunken Spending Spree Award will go to the Miami Dolphins. I know, and they've done this in the past. I think this is a little bit different. You got Mike McDaniel there, and I think he's going to follow the format that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan did when Shanahan went from Atlanta to San Francisco. It was import as many players as you can right away to build out that offense. They need a ton of help on the offensive line. They have the second most cap space in the league right now, and they don't have a pick until number 29. So I think you got to make a move here in free agency. I think they're a candidate to do that.
And I think what you're saying here, it's different than winning the offseason. They're just going to spend a ton of money and throw money at the players.
Think about this. They were the ones who wanted to meet with Tom Brady on a boat. I'm not saying Mike McDaniel. He has post all that. But a bunch of nonsense. They're trying to change. They don't want to just sit
I don't trust the Miami Dolphins.
That's where the drunken spending spree part comes
Period.
in.
Yeah. Keep them away from the boats. Bad news.
Makes sense.
Nice fill-in-the-blank seg. Moving on. It's time to dig back into the Seahawks situation here. Wow. An organization in complete transition. We're going to have Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic with us in just a moment to break it all down. Welcome back. We have a TV show because we have a podcast. And on that podcast this week, Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic broke down the divorce between Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. Here's a portion of that conversation. You were on the show for the first time last year. It was probably around this time or maybe in the spring. And we talked about Russell Wilson and the Seahawks and what's going to happen and how it felt like a pivotal year 2021 was going to be for this marriage. And it almost felt, I remember at the time I was talking about, they need to have a nice year for this thing to get calmed down. They didn't have a nice year, and things didn't get calmed down, and now Russell Wilson is on the Broncos. So let's start there, Michael Sean. Is this a marriage that could have been saved if they just were able to get things on track in 2021? Or was this a divorce that was going to happen anything short of, say, a deep playoff run?
Yeah, it needed to be a deep playoff run. I think they needed to probably get to the NFC title game. Obviously, getting to the Super Bowl would have been great. I mean, I just think that there was no middle ground, really. And I think I probably talked about it last time I was on here, too. Like, when you have a guy who named his book Win Forever, that's Pete Carroll, and you guys have another guy who names his son Win, that'd be Russell Wilson. Like, you really don't have any room to do any losing if you guys can't agree on stuff. So I always thought that if Russell Wilson didn't see a direct path to a championship, at least following the 2021 season, like I said, if they lose close in the NFC title game, that means you're right there, right? But anything short of that, you could just tell, like, they have the same goal, which is to win, but they just can't agree. They being Russ, Pete, maybe even John Schneider, they just could not agree on not only just how to get there, but what happens when you encounter obstacles. And I think that last part is really important. Every team encounters them, but if you're not on the same path on how to problem solve, you'll really have problems.
I feel like your average Seahawks fan can read your incredible write-up on what happened here and contemplate, yes, the split was coming. This was sort of inevitable. But you also, on your podcast, Seahawks Man to Man, talked about the word hubris on the part of the Seahawks organization, people inside of it. Can you just kind of unpack, like, what their thinking was? Because it sounds like they maybe seem a little too overconfident that they can overcome the rare move of trading away a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and that's the word hubris is that was used to me, I think, twice in conversations with people after the trade, just kind of talking about why Seattle would do it. Now, obviously, Pete Carroll and John Schneider aren't going to get up there and say, yeah, no, we just think we can draft another Russell Wilson. But remember, this is the team that was reportedly going to draft Patrick Mahomes in 2017, the team that reportedly called the Browns, or at least talked to the Browns, I don't know who called who, ahead of the 2018 draft to potentially trade for the number 1 overall pick that year, believed to then have been used on Josh Allen if the Seahawks had it, which would have been a good move, clearly. But like those moves just signal that this team, maybe it's just John, maybe it's Pete, maybe it's John and a couple personnel guys, believe that, hey, man, you give us enough draft picks, we can rebuild this thing. Once we built it once, we can build it again. And I don't even necessarily fault them for thinking that, because in a league where the average like lifespan, quote unquote, of a player is about 3 years and some change, you can't just count on having guys forever.
I'm just still like interested in going back a few years, because the way that you painted how close they were, how Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson were very much on the same page, and they had almost certain sort of rules for Russell Wilson not to criticize him too publicly, and how in the end there was a lot of criticism from Russell Wilson's camp of Pete Carroll privately, and how they were burying his boss, but that Russell Wilson was always trying to have like this plausible deniability of like, well, I didn't ask for a trade. I just said, here's where I would want to be traded if I was gonna get traded. Like, how did that play within the organization with his teammates, and how like, wouldn't that be annoying to be working with this dude for the last 5 years while he's kind of burying you privately? And like, how did that work with his teammates? I'm really curious.
Russ is a polarizing figure in Seattle for some of the reasons you mentioned. I mean, even look at this last season, right? This last season's a really good example, and I have to write a story, I think, at some point about his legacy, and I'll include this kind of like anecdotal evidence there. Like, Russ broke his finger. That sucked, right? No one wanted him to break his finger, right? But then when the doctor tells you have 6 to 8 weeks, that you got to sit out because your finger's broken. Russ hears that and goes, well, I can do it in 3 to 4. Like, well, no, that's not how diagnosis usually works, brother. So you got the guy, seemingly and then this is not anything a player told me or coach told me specifically, but like, you got the guy seemingly still making it about him. Even on Sunday Night Football, he's still like doing the routine, even though he's on IR. Like stuff like that. Clearly,
he's tweeting out a lot of the surgery. He's putting the Instagram of the recovery. Like, yeah, he was setting it all up.
Right. It almost became like a Russell Wilson production, which is not, again, that's normal. But when you're winning, it's easier to just be like, all right, it's kind of just, par for the course. But then when you rush back, against the Green Bay Packers, at 2 weeks after the team put up a 30 ball, obviously against the Jaguars, but, in Geno Smith's first win, and then you get shut out, by Green Bay, that stuff doesn't sit well. I think like 2 weeks later in Washington, he threw an interception, on the 2-point conversion, the last play of the game in Monday Night Football. They lost that game. And not to say everything was Russ's fault necessarily, or that teammates just hated the guy, hated his guts. But, it's just easy to excuse stuff that, you could dismiss as like annoying or cheesy or whatever when it's not followed by greatness, right? Like, his work ethic will never be questioned. His talent will never be questioned. But it's like, hey, man, if you kick it a certain way, we need you to be out here and be great, And I think that made him like a polarizing figure behind the scenes.
So crystal ball this, because now that's great that Seattle and the people inside won this power struggle and end of an era, everything's changed, but you still have to go find the next quarterback, and you can't just try to sell Andy Dalton to the northwest part of the country here. Like, what is the move? I mean, is there maybe something explosive coming, like a Deshaun Watson or a trade for Kirk Cousins, someone that we can identify as an actual starter?
Yeah, I would have to think so, if for no other reason, survival. I've been telling anybody who's willing to listen, like, in the NFL, I haven't been covering this that long. I'm 29, but for the most part,
humble brag.
for the most part here, people who cause the need to rebuild don't get to see the rebuild through. That's usually not how it goes. So, like, if you miss the playoffs in 2021 and you have to rebuild and you miss it again in 2022, what's the job security like at that point? So I think for survival purposes, Pete Carroll and John Snyder are basically down to two options in my mind. Like you said, you can't trot Jimmy G out there or Mitch Trubisky and expect to keep your job for longer than a year, right? So I think they're down to two options. Either you get an established guy like Kirk, or you keep your eyes on the biggest caveat qualifier in the world and see if Deshaun Watson is not going to jail. Then you see if you could trade for him. Or you get a rookie in the draft. Get a rookie in the draft will maybe buy you some time, depending on how good or bad that rookie is. But I just think the option they have to eliminate is get the stopgap journeyman, Jimmy G, Tyrod Taylor, Geno Smith type of guy, because you can't trade Russell Wilson and then put that out there. Like, you can't put Tyrod Taylor on the season ticket holder renew email in 2022. No. That's how you get canned after the 2022 season.
All right, good conversation there. Check out the Around the NFL podcast for the whole thing. Coming up next, we're good at this. We've been doing it a while, so prepare to be educated. Amazingly accurate predictions about the new league year up next on the broadcast. So, yes, we are back. We are the broadcast of Around the NFL, and now we're going to do something. We've been doing the podcast since 2013. We've been through this before, so we know how things shake out. So here are some amazingly accurate predictions. I'll start with the domino that's, it's tricky. There's a lot of layers to it, but I still think Deshaun Watson is getting moved, and it's just a matter of where he goes. I think he's a Panther, and I'll put it April 1. Now, we know, obviously, he has the legal situation unfolding as we speak right now, so that needs to be resolved. But I think there's going to be a team that wants to roll the dice and bring in a franchise star that he is, a franchise talent, I should say, and the Panthers are desperate, and they have the resources and the need.
Well, the two teams that have been talked about the most have been the Panthers and the Seahawks. And we have to see what happens with the legal status. I don't know. Their ownership was made to sell because of how they treated women. And so to bring in Deshaun Watson for this franchise, to me, is especially problematic.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, the prior ownership, different situation. It's an apples and oranges, but I see your point.
All sorts of things.
Obviously,
it's tricky.
Greg, you're up.
I am going to go to the Miami Dolphins and believe that they're going to sign Amari Cooper. I wouldn't even be shocked if it was a trade. One way or another, I think Amari Cooper goes to the Dolphins. I think it's a perfect fit. I think Tua, I know he didn't play with Amari Cooper back at Alabama, but they've got that connection, and I think he would really complement Jalen Waddle well, and I think their number one priority is going to be weapons for Tua.
This fits with my Miami drunken spending spree theory, and I love it. I think it's right away, it puts Tua in a much better position, and Cooper and Waddle together, that's a pretty unstoppable force in the AFC East.
That's very nice. That'd be difficult to deal with. Mark, how about you?
I have Kyler Murray moving on from Arizona and going east to the Big Apple, the New York Giants, okay? And I'll tell you why.
This is an amazingly accurate prediction.
I am nailing gigantic onion-hanging predictions in this show, this particular show, and this is another one of them. The Giants have a lot to give in return. They have the 5th pick, the 7th pick. You could throw them Daniel Jones in reverse. But you would if you were Arizona. I think we just, coming out of the combine, I don't care if Kyler Murray put his Cardinals photos back on Instagram. This situation feels to me ill at hand, and I don't see Kyler Murray necessarily even sort of showing up to Arizona's offseason program until he gets more money. It's a sticky situation.
I'll give you some credit,
Move him out of town.
I'm going to give you credit because I know your playbook. We've been doing this a long time. When this doesn't happen, nobody's going to say anything. It's never going to be brought up again.
That's not credit.
But if it does happen, you're a prediction god.
Right.
There's no sense trying to actually be right. You just throw it against the wall and maybe a miracle happens.
It's like Tom Brady to the 49ers earlier this show.
Right, same thing. Same logic.
When both of these happen, you can be certain I'll be tweeting out the video.
If the Hail Mary sails out of the back of the end zone and gets knocked down, it's not notable. The Hail Mary that gets caught 1 out of 25 times.
Well, I should have gone like Kyle Van Noy to the Lions or something. Right?
Pretty good. That could be accurate.
Nobody's talking about
Hail
that.
Mary. So. Kyler Murray. I would love to see him with Brian Dable. If you're going to stick the Giants in primetime 5 times a year, let's give them a real quarterback. Let's do this. I like it.
Win that
You know who the real quarterback is? Daniel Jones, the next Josh Allen. Let's see what happens there.
No, that sounds dull. Better. No.
All right, let's go. We're going to say goodbye. But before we do, maybe Sessler's got one more in him. One more bombshell. Up next, some weekend vibes. Welcome back to the broadcast. Before we say goodbye, Weekend Vibes. One last chance for Mark to have a look at me prediction. But Greg, you're up first.
I'm just asking for the NFL gods to just keep the chaos rolling. You know, we had Russell Wilson on Tuesday, Wentz on Wednesday, Khalil Mack trade on Thursday. You know, get Ciara in the mix. Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan, Amari Cooper. Let's just keep those trades rolling and keep the NBA buried.
Oh my God. We're getting closer and closer to the Russell Wilson introductory press conference in Denver. Unintentional comedy galore. Mark.
Greg demands it. Here in our building, they've got wonderful artwork all over the place of players, old and new. And they've got an Odell Beckham that we marched in here, after the pandemic. He was in a Browns uniform, a couple weeks ago, Dan.
Oh,
they
yeah.
Repainted him in a Rams. And I get that. I get it. The Browns run was a bit sketchy. This was better. But what if he winds up on team number 3? Our NFL painter, I don't know where he is in the building. We have a painter on retainer.
They keep him under the stairwell on floor 4. I don't know why. Why do we have a number 2 wide receiver on the wall, lionized next to Hall of Famers?
It's a fair question.
He's like next to Tom Brady and Jim Brown. Like, what are we doing? What is with the Odell obsession?
Now I want like Belichick or someone who's got a problem with the NFL to sign Odell just to mess up our hallways. So, give him something.
The painter, he has a jaunty little cap, and he's covered in overalls with paint, and he has 2 brushes. He just walks around like a ghost.
Never resting.
Finally, I hope everyone's enjoying the Mitch-a-sance. I hope everyone understands that this Mitch Trubisky conversation that's been going on nonstop amongst football insiders and outsiders won't last forever. But he's connected here. He's connected there. He's thought as a potential starter here. He's thought as a reclamation product there. I can't believe there's been so much Mitch Trubisky talk, but enjoy it while we still have it.
A lot of marry my daughter talk among coaches at the combine.
Here's the thing about the Mitch-a-sance. It never happens when he's playing football. So this is the time for the Mitch-a-sance.
It's Mitch-a-palooza is what it is. Thank you for watching the broadcast. See you next week. We're going streaking!